My name is Julia Miller. I'm turning 28 this year. I married Kevin, a senior from my university club, right after we graduated. I didn't job hunt but instead chose to become a stay-at-home wife. Kevin's mom was also a homemaker, so he grew up thinking it's normal for women to do all the housework. He lived at home until we got married and didn't know how to do any housework. As a full-time homemaker, I took care of all his needs perfectly. I had lived alone before, so I was quite capable of managing household chores. We both loved children and wanted them early but struggled with infertility before finally undergoing treatment. And after the treatment, I unexpectedly got pregnant with twins. I suffered from morning sickness but continued doing housework to avoid getting scolded, even while feeling nauseous. Morning sickness isn't an illness. Many women work while they're pregnant, Kevin often said. Taking his words to heart, I felt my thinking was naive because I wasn't part of the workforce. Giving birth to twins wasn't easy, and at one point, both the babies and I were in danger. But fortunately, we all made it through healthy. When I finally came home from the hospital, I found laundry piled up and trash scattered everywhere, a total mess. Kevin hadn't done any housework while I was hospitalized. He didn't cook, so the sink was clean but surrounded by scattered instant noodle trash. I was in pain and could hardly do any housework after coming home. I couldn't go to my parents' home for postpartum care because Kevin said there'd be no one to do the housework. Initially, my mom from the countryside helped a few times a week. But she couldn't take much time off work, so I was left alone to manage childcare and housework. I couldn't keep up with the housework as I did before. Exhausted from child-rearing, I ended up ordering takeout for days. Kevin, expecting perfect housework, was unhappy with the continuous takeout. Then he finally exploded. "You're feeding your husband nothing but nutritionless food every day. Who do you think is earning the money here? You've hardly cleaned since your mom stopped coming. You've lost weight post-delivery, so get your act together and take care of the house. How long will you slack off on housework? Yeah, let's get mom to whip you into shape," he ranted. Struggling physically and mentally with the unfamiliar task of caring for twins, his words were like salt in a wound. He often belittled homemakers. "A housewife's job is easy, just doing housework. You don't understand the hardships of working because you're not in the workforce." Usually, I'd agree, acknowledging his hard work. But now it's different. Caring for him and our twins was overwhelming. I usually agreed with him, but this time I couldn't help but retort. "I just gave birth a month ago, you know? I should be resting and doing postpartum care at my parents', but your selfishness prevented that. We have 2 kids, you should help with childcare. They're your children too, right? The doctor even said I should absolutely rest for 1 to 2 months. How can I rest if I'm taking care of you too? You should be grateful I'm even preparing meals." I let out all my pent-up frustration. It was the first time I'd spoken up like that, and Kevin was shocked. The doctor did say I absolutely needed to rest. It's abnormal that I can't even follow the doctor's advice, let alone without any appreciation from Kevin, only scolding. He thinks it's natural for a homemaker to do everything, so he's never thanked me. Ironing Kevin's clothes is a given. Shining his shoes to a sparkle, also a given. Preparing a well-rounded meal with a main dish and 2 sides is expected. I'd get scolded if I didn't manage these. "Just do your job as a housewife," he'd say. "Can't you even do that?" he'd add. So, my objections seemed unforgivable to him. "You're living off the money I earn, and now you're getting mad at me? I'm just saying I do my job, so you should do yours." Suddenly getting all hysterical. Women change, huh, scary. You don't even have to ride a crowded train or get yelled at by a boss. I don't want to hear complaints from someone as privileged as you. You should be able to handle solo parenting. My feelings just didn't get through to him. No sign of apology or reflection. Instead, he lectured me more. He believes the person earning money is superior, so it's pointless to argue. Kevin has never even pushed a button on the washing machine. I remember being shocked when I heard this while we were dating. At his parents' house, this was the norm, and his father never did any housework. His mother managed everything for her husband and son alone. She didn't get any allowance and had to manage within the given household budget. I was shocked when she told me this upon marriage. She joked about becoming a master of frugality because of it. Luckily, I manage all of Kevin's salary, giving him an allowance. I was relieved he wasn't stingy about this. Kevin doesn't have many hobbies, doesn't smoke or drink, so he doesn't need much money. That's why he doesn't ask for much allowance, just telling me to save up. That's probably why he insists I should perfectly manage the house since I handle the finances. But his attitude needs to improve. I'll call your mother for some training. That's fine with you, right? I snapped back at him. Oh, so you admit you're wrong. Get some lessons in housekeeping from Mom and become a better wife, he said, calling his mother right away. His mother lives far away, and we hadn't introduced the twins to her yet. I thought it was a good opportunity to do so. Upon receiving Kevin's call, she rushed over to our house. As soon as she arrived, Kevin started complaining about me. She slapped him and scolded him right away. Don't underestimate a housewife. Ease up on Julia. Giving birth is like recovering from a 2-month traffic accident. Would you make someone who's been in an accident do all the housework? They're your kids too. You take care of them. I was surprised to see my usually gentle and kind mother-in-law so angry. Honestly, I was hoping she'd scold him, but I didn't expect her to be this angry. Sorry, but why are you so mad? Julia doesn't even work. Kevin apologized, but still sounded like he was making excuses, looking down on the role of a full-time homemaker. I felt contempt for him, able to make such inflammatory comments to an already furious mother-in-law. As expected, her anger intensified. Who do you think enables you to go to work? Who washes and irons your clothes? Who cleans and cooks so you can live without doing anything? You have days off, but Julia works 365 days without a break. And still, you have the audacity to act so high and mighty. Who do you think you are? My mother-in-law, being a homemaker herself, understood my feelings well. She voiced everything I wanted to say, and I felt relieved. I was glad I had her come over. Thank you for speaking up for me. I honestly never expected you to get that angry, I thanked her. Sorry for showing such an embarrassing side. You might have heard from Kevin, but his dad never did any housework either. I was worried whether he could lead a proper married life, having grown up like that. My mother-in-law expressed regret for not educating Kevin properly and had planned to discipline him if I were struggling. She rushed over after our recent phone call, angered by Kevin's arrogant tone. When he said, "Make Julia shape up," I couldn't help but laugh. I thought it's you who needs shaping up. She continued, her tone getting harsher. I would soon understand the full meaning of her words. Kevin, scolded harshly by his mother, was finally speechless. Seeing him quietly submit was satisfying. Apparently, my mother-in-law, fed up with her husband's neglect of housework, was considering divorce and had left home. I've been enduring it, but there's a limit. I still have a long life ahead, and the thought of taking care of him for the rest of it. I've decided to live freely from now on. I appreciate the work he did, but I've repaid my debt. She looked so cool, deciding to divorce. I didn't want her or myself to go through a divorce, but maybe it's a good option. Divorce. What about Dad? Mom, you're being too selfish. You may be good at your job, but lacking life skills is fatal. Can't cook, can't do laundry? Living with someone who can't survive alone is hell. You're just like your dad. At least learn to live on your own. You never know when you might be dumped, she warned Kevin. Julia won't leave me. Without me, she'll have no money. His belief that I couldn't leave was infuriating. Who knows? Many housewives are capable. Julia could probably survive on her own. You're the one who'd struggle, my mother-in-law retorted, and I felt relieved. Indeed, I might be more capable at work than Kevin. I don't plan to divorce. My job can only be done by me. A housewife can't do my job. Well, maybe they could manage housekeeping. Kevin continued, unyielding and arrogant. Why did I even marry him? I found myself wondering, as Kevin seemed like such a terrible person. He had no intention of changing his ways, yet he also insisted he didn't want a divorce. It's hell, just like Mom said, I thought. Then my mother-in-law spoke up. Julia, may I stay here for a while? Her presence might improve Kevin's behavior, I hoped. Of course. Please do. We had a spare room, so I welcomed her eagerly. Thank you. I'll be here for a while. Stay as long as you like. I was glad she seemed happy. But only Kevin looked gloomy. probably realizing he couldn't be as selfish as before. After deciding to live with my mother-in-law for a while, she made a phone call. I was already relieved she had scolded and slapped Kevin, but she had more plans. After hanging up, she announced, "I've arranged a 1-month paternity leave for you. So, for 1 month, you'll handle both childcare and housework. Housework is easy, right? You'll be glad to stay home from work." She declared this to Kevin, who had a friend connection with an executive at his company. He had practically landed the job through connections, though he did take the entrance exam. That's why my mother-in-law was able to arrange the paternity leave quickly. She had direct contact with the company's executive. I had suggested he take paternity leave before, but he insisted there was no replacement for him. It was frustrating to see how easily it was arranged now. He had a week to hand over his work, then would take a month off. Getting a month off for paternity leave so easily, looks like they can replace you anytime. My mother-in-law sarcastically wounded Kevin's pride. I totally agreed with her. "Julia, you rest up. I'll make sure this guy doesn't push you too hard. I'll be watching over him." She reassured me, which felt incredibly supportive. "Really, thank you so much." I was so overwhelmed and grateful for her kind words that I almost cried. When I had just given birth, I was incredibly lonely and on the verge of breaking down. My husband didn't help with the kids at all, and my parents were gone, so I had no one to rely on. That's why I understand your feelings so well. Sharing childcare and housework as a couple makes such a difference. We couldn't do it, but you two still have a chance to make it right. My mother-in-law, drawing from her own experiences, expressed that she didn't want me to go through the hardships she faced. I realized that she was determined to educate Kevin this time, toughening her heart for our sake, so that our marriage could succeed in the future. Kevin, too proud to admit defeat after looking down on housewives, couldn't say he didn't want to do housework when he had no job. "I'll ace this housework and childcare. Staying at home all the time is the best. I'm actually lucky to get a break from work. I'll prove I can do house chores better than Julia," he boasted. "That's the spirit. Then please show us how much better at housekeeping you are than Julia." I hadn't slept properly since having the babies, so I took advantage of my mother-in-law's words and finally got some rest. With her around, I could sleep without worrying about the kids. It had been ages since I had slept for over 3 hours straight, and my body felt much more revived. I hoped Kevin would manage the housework perfectly for a while, given his bold claims. However, he soon faced defeat. Waking up and peeking into the living room, I found him in total disarray. "They won't stop crying. Don't cry at the same time, I only have 2 hands. Don't get mad at the babies. Crying is their job. I thought you said childcare was a breeze. The milk's too hot. You can't feed them this. Cool it down to body temperature. They won't stop crying, I have to feed them now. What's body temperature? How do I even know that?" I could hear Kevin and my mother-in-law arguing. Despite his earlier claims of it being easy, Kevin was completely flustered just because the babies cried simultaneously. Seeing that, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Dealing with 2 crying babies at the same time is a daily routine for me. Realizing that I had been managing this alone every day made me want to pat myself on the back. Kevin, who had never been involved in childcare, was now exhausted and completely worn out, learning from scratch how to make formula, bathe the babies, and change diapers under my mother-in-law's guidance. "Taking care of 2 babies alone is just too much." "But that's what you forced Julia to do." "But Julia is a woman, so. Other than giving birth, men can do everything else. Gender doesn't matter." My mother-in-law was constantly giving Kevin a piece of her mind for complaining about his first experience with childcare. Every day he complained, and every time, she scolded him. Kevin was new to all household chores. He had to learn everything from scratch. At first, it took him 3 hours just to prepare dinner. Despite previously demanding a well-rounded meal, Kevin could barely manage 1 or 2 dishes. I couldn't help but notice the irony of him being unable to prepare the elaborate meals he had always insisted on. However, seeing him trying his best, I didn't say anything. Just getting through a day of housework and childcare left him completely drained. Thanks to my husband and mother-in-law, I could finally get a good night's sleep. I even had time to play with the kids and meet friends for coffee. Kevin sometimes grumbled that I was taking it too easy, but my mother-in-law always defended me. You've worked hard enough, you deserve to take breaks. Don't hesitate to take time for yourself. Don't worry about the kids, I'm here. Thanks to my kind mother-in-law, I was able to enjoy some leisure time. However, after about 2 weeks, she had to return to her own home to check on my father-in-law. Kevin was delighted by her departure. I've worked hard enough, I'm taking a break, he declared and stopped doing any housework as soon as she left. I couldn't neglect the kids, so I ended up taking care of them. Now I'd like to taste some of Julia's cooking, Kevin would say, and I ended up doing all the household chores again. Without supervision, Kevin seemed incapable of doing any housework or childcare. He would sleep until noon or go out drinking all night, as he was off work. Can't you at least make the formula? I can't, I'm hungover. You understand how tough housework is, right? Why won't you help? I'll have to do it all again when Mom comes back, so let me rest now. There's no break for a housewife. Then why don't you do my job? Don't change the subject. When my mother-in-law was gone, Kevin and I would often argue like this. I had hoped Kevin would have learned something, but I was wrong. Nothing had changed. Before she left, my mother-in-law told me to report everything to her, so I called her every night to update her on Kevin's behavior. Everything went back to how it was as soon as you left. I see. Well, change doesn't happen overnight. But leave it to me. I'm sorry for always relying on you. Don't worry about it. I played a part in raising him this way. Your father-in-law seemed fine, so I'll be returning soon. Yes, we're looking forward to having you back. Disappointed by Kevin's behavior but still trusting my mother-in-law, I decided to leave him be for the few days until she returned. I thought it wouldn't be beneficial for him if I did everything during this period. I even stopped preparing meals for him. Hey. Why isn't there any dinner for me? You were making it until yesterday. I thought it wouldn't be good to coddle you after all the effort my mother-in-law put into teaching you. I admit I was spoiling you a bit after she returned, but not anymore. Please take care of all the household chores until she comes back. Don't get too cocky. Enjoy it while you can. Though I didn't know how my mother-in-law would discipline Kevin next, I chose to step back and trust her. A few days after our phone call, my mother-in-law returned. Seeing the house with no laundry, dishes, or cleaning done, she sighed. What is this mess? Julia only took care of the kids. Well, you should have been doing the childcare. Not leaving it all to Julia. You told her how many days are you going to slack off in housework, right after she gave birth and was doing solo parenting. A healthy man like you neglecting housework and childcare is nothing then. Julia seems to have more endurance than you. Maybe she can do a better job than you, a company employee? Her relentless talking left Kevin overwhelmed and unable to respond. Don't just stand there, say something. Well, while you were gone, he said quite a few bold things, I told my mother-in-law. I had recorded all the things Kevin said when he was drunk and played them back for her. This is what your son really thinks. Women are so naive about society. Mom, too, acting all high and mighty without knowing anything about the real world. It's all thanks to me that you and Julia can even eat. Housework and childcare are women's jobs. It was good that I recorded everything he said. Drunk words are sober thoughts. To think you had such thoughts about your mother who raised you. Complaining about being exhausted from housework and childcare, yet still so arrogant. Don't record me without permission. It's not what I really think. Kevin desperately tried to defend himself. So, you think like this, huh? It's good to know your true feelings. If you want Julia to understand society so much, how about letting her work? If she leaves her housewife duties, you'll be the one struggling. She might even do a better job than you at the same company, maybe even replacing you. Oh. I should tell Mr. A, your executive, how you neglect housework and childcare and have no endurance. Maybe I'll recommend Julia too. They might want her to replace you. Mr. A is the executive at Kevin's company and a friend of my mother-in-law. He always says he dislikes men without grit. I wonder how he'll react. I'm looking forward to it. Please don't do that. I'm sorry. I didn't realize housework was so hard. I'll help with the housework and childcare from now on. Just don't tell Mr. A. My mother-in-law chose not to report Kevin this time. But if he ever disrespects you again, let me know. Next time, I'll make sure Mr. A disciplines him. Thank you. I appreciate it. I felt really relieved and satisfied when Kevin finally apologized. Interestingly, when my mother-in-law went back home to check on the house, my father-in-law was in a bit of trouble. He couldn't find the nail clippers, didn't know how to do the laundry, and hadn't cooked any meals, clearly struggling without my mother-in-law, who he had taken for granted all these years. He even apologized for looking down on homemakers. My mother-in-law said, "You're lucky you realized this early. Your father-in-law only understood the difficulty of housework at his age." Well, at least he apologized while he's still alive. Although she had considered a late-life divorce, seeing her husband's repentant behavior made her rethink, and they managed to avoid splitting up. She returned to her husband and resumed their life together. Since then, we've been in almost daily contact, updating each other on our lives. She shared that she's teaching her husband housework from scratch, and he recently managed to make fried rice and curry, much to her delight. He's also started going to the grocery store more actively. With less housework burden, my mother-in-law is even considering starting a new hobby. How about you, Julia? Is he helping out properly now? Yes, he's like a changed man, doing everything around the house. All thanks to you. I was honestly ready to leave him and go back to my parents' house. It feels like a dream to be able to laugh and spend time with my husband again. I expressed my gratitude to my mother-in-law once more. Since then, Kevin has been wrapping up work early, rarely going out for drinks, and taking on household chores. He's gotten used to caring for the kids, no longer panicking at their cries. And now, even for meals I prepare, he expresses his gratitude, saying, "This is delicious. Thank you for making it." I never thought I'd hear such words from him. I hope we can continue to cooperate as a couple, raising our twins and sharing enjoyable times together.